Hello, and welcome to Theater Thursdays. I'm David Alley, and today my special guest is Christy Forgarty. Hi, Christy.
Hi, David. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Again, I'm David Alley. I am a senior lecturer with the Department of Theater and also a resident company member for over 20 seasons with the Clarence Brown Theater Company here in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is the native land of the Yuchi and Muskogee Creek people, as well as the Cherokee Nations. Christy, as our special guest today, you're going to talk to us about the biggest star of our production of Around the World in 80 Days. But before we start, I got to address the elephant in the room.
You mean this elephant?
Yes.
This is Pumpkin. She was the star of the show.
She sure was.
I'm Christy Forgarty. I'm the prop shop supervisor here at the Clarence Brown Theater. I also prop mastered and puppet designed Around the World in 80 Days.
So let's start off by maybe you telling us how you address the challenge of even figuring out how to bring an elephant onto the CBT stage to begin with.
Well, it all started with the designer and director kind of discussing the play. And in the play, there is a mention of the elephant. And all different productions do it all differently. Our designer really wanted to have the head of an elephant. She had designed this backdrop that was a half circle, and she wanted that to be the body, and then this giant elephant head to come up behind it and make it the whole big elephant. My first thought when I looked at the design was, I've never done anything like that. It's cool. I've never done anything like that. I'm not sure we could pull it off. Then I was thinking of different solutions for it. And I was like, well, what if we did big flats, put foam on it, carved it out, and then draped it with fabric? And I knew we could pull that off and we'd have time for that and it would look good. And she came back, encountered me and said, no, I really want this puppet. I really want it to be a giant puppet head. And so I had a little extra time that I could spend on something, a specific project. And I was like, it would be fun. And I do love puppets. I had never really had time to work on anything like that, and especially in this scale. And I just went for it.
Awesome. So if you don't mind, can you lead us through the process step by step once you and Nevena had a concept for the design and take us all the way through the finished product that we're looking at on screen here now?
Yeah, I started to do a little research and look online and try to see what was out there and spark like which direction do I need to go. And I felt so lost. I was like, I just need a starting point. I just need somewhere to start. And I remember that we had a former grad student in scene design, Morgan, who was doing puppets in Nashville. So I talked to her and I said, help, where do I even start this process? Put me on some kind of path. And she's like, well, I don't do anything this big, but this guy does. And look at this stuff. This is the materials. Here's like a little handout. This is like the process of it. And so I took that and I went from there. And then I had a starting point. And then I went and I YouTubed like crazy. I did tons of YouTube tutorials and research. And the same technique is used in cosplay, the materials and techniques used in cosplay a lot. So there's actually a lot out there.
So I imagine that it was a lot like having to deal with what the costume shop deals with. You probably had to create patterns for the fabric and the foam pieces and the support structure and everything. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So once I got as much knowledge as I thought I could, and I felt confident to move forward, I gathered up my materials and I needed to come up with what it was going to look like. And a lot of times people carve something and start there. Well, I knew I wanted to save time. I still had this really time frame that was a big crunch because there's tons of other props in the show too. So I bought this to kind of mimic after what I was going for, the look, and I approved it by the designer and everything. So then I got this, which is just like a little wood carved structure, and then I put tape over it and kind of made my own pattern with it. I I then cut out my little pattern pieces, and you kind of do it with the different shapes, and you're making flat pieces that then all these flat pieces go together and then make this 3D structure. So I did that, and I then took my pattern piece and put it all together to make sure that is how it worked. And it was cool because I made this little mock-up with that was paper that looked just like this. And I was like, well, that worked. So then, but my pattern was only that scale. So then we took those little pattern pieces and I figured out how much I had to increase them to get something this size. And so we took those and we blew them up on an overhead projector. So me and my staff then were in the dark on ladders tracing out these giant pattern pieces. After we got that done, then I started cutting out of the foam, cutting all these giant pieces out of the foam. It was very nerve-wracking because it was all this material and I had never done anything like this. So I was like, I hope this works. And when I started putting the pieces together and they started forming this 3D replica of this little guy, it was a really cool experience. And I remember the moment going, hey, this is going to work. This is very cool.
I'm sure that was a relief because, a lot of times you guys can start working on something you've maybe never done before, and you can have a couple of failed tries at it and just redo it. But something on this scale, I'm sure it was pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah, we couldn't it was always just move forward, tweak, learn as you go, but move forward because you couldn't just scrap it and say that didn't work. Now what are we going to do? It was like, this has got to work. And let's just hope it turns out for the best.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. But, it looks so realistic under the lights in particular, the trunk and the ears and the way they moved. Can you talk? You mentioned some foam and you were cutting out pieces of foam. I'm guessing that was structural. And what kind of material did you put over the outside?
Yeah, we use the foam is an EVA foam, which is like your floor mat, like your fatigue floor mat. And then under that it has some PVC that I learned how to bend PVC to give it a little more structure so all the weight isn't on the foam itself. And then after that, then we I just put dyed muslin because she was kind of wanted that fabric look. I dyed muslin and put that over top of it. And then once we got it up on stage and I could see how it looked under lights and everything, then I came through and sprayed it and gave it a little more dimension.
Right, right. So up behind that semicircular wall that you talked about, that was sort of the body of the elephant. Of course, we use that in a number of different ways. They use the deck of a ship or whatever it might be. But how many crew members had to be up there on that platform behind that wall to operate the ears and all of that stuff?
We had 3 students bring it on, and it was a really cool sound effect. It was like a boom, boom, boom. And when she came on, which is really cool, when they came on, and then we rigged it so the poles would be then set into the set, so they weren't holding the weight, but they were there for them, so the elephant didn't tip over or anything. And one of the crew members then passed on the trunk to the actress so she could manipulate the trunk, and then another crew member came by the ear and manipulated the ear, which was it's just a PVC piece with the fabric on it.
Right. Well, with the sound effects and everything, it was so realistic and so beautiful to look at. Just an amazing, amazing piece of work. And it literally stopped the show every night when she came out. I mean, the audience would break into applause, which doesn't always happen with a set piece or a prop, but it was so breathtaking that spontaneous reaction happened time and time again. So how did that make you feel?
It was a really cool feeling. When I was working late, I would run up to the lobby because I could see I could see the stage and hear the audience reactions and stuff. So I just run up there and hear everybody's reaction. I was like, that's so cool. My job isn't to make the star or anything. My job is just to make everything feel like everybody's living in that world and not making a huge impact. So it's cool when I actually get that opportunity to do something like that.
That's awesome. Awesome. But such an amazing piece of work that you did. Thank you so much, Christy, for sharing this process with us today.
Thanks, David.
You bet. And thank the rest of you for joining us for another edition of Theater Thursdays. Join us next week as we wrap up our discussion on the Clarence Brown Theater's production of Around the World in 80 Days.